Okay, great. So, hi everyone. I hope you've been enjoying the Global Skills Day sessions today. My name is Monique Malcolm-Hay, and you may be able to tell from my very British accent that I'm from London in the UK. I previously worked at PwC as the Global Program Manager for their New World New Skills program, and I'm now a Future of Work startup consultant, a visiting industrial fellow at Aston Business School, and I'm also a Stanford GSB candidate. I'm very excited to be moderating today's New Skills Training for Work session, where we will hear from a diverse group of phenomenal speakers, which I'll introduce shortly. So without further ado, I will invite each of the speakers to give a short intro to themselves. So I guess let's start with Sebastian. It would be great to hear an introduction from you.
Awesome, yeah. Thanks, Monique, and hello to everybody. My name is Sebastian Espinosa. I'm currently Managing Director of all international operations at Coding Dojo. And Coding Dojo is a coding academy school that was started in Silicon Valley, actually, in the United States, but today we are in more than 10 countries around the world, and yeah, glad to be here.
Great, thank you. And next, it would be good to hear from Maira.
Hello, everyone. Maira here, speaking from Brazil. I'm CEO for Inteli. Inteli is a new initiative. It's a private nonprofit university that will be launched in February 22. We are a startup. You can imagine how hectic life is these days. And our main purpose is to develop leaders for technology here in Brazil, for the technology area here in Brazil. McKinsey predicts that in 10 years, the Brazilian market will have a gap of 1 million professionals in technology. And we've decided to approach this problem by developing new leaders. So that means we are 100% project-based curriculum, and we teach not only computing, but also business competencies, and also a very strong program on soft skills and leadership competencies. So this is Inteli, this is me, glad to be here. Such a pleasure. Thank you, Monique, and everyone.
Fantastic, thank you, Maira. And next, it'd be great to hear from Marcello.
Thank you, Monique, and it's really nice to be here with you today. I'm one of the founders of Recoded. We are a nonprofit empowering youth from underserved communities to start a career in technology. So we were founded in 2017, and now we work in 4 countries in the Middle East, and we have trained thousands of youth in coding skills and also design skills. We do that through coding boot camps and also workshops. And our mission is really to change and bring more diversity to the workforce, which I think it's a topic that we can explore more in this conversation.
Definitely, we'll be exploring that more in today's conversation. So thank you. Next, it'll be great to hear from Sam.
Hello, I'm Sam Glassenberg. I've spent my career in the video games industry at companies like LucasArts and Microsoft. Now I run a company called Level X that makes video games for doctors. So basically we take the top video game developers, designers, artists, engineers who've worked on everything from Mortal Kombat to Words with Friends, and we team them up with hundreds of doctors and other medical professionals from around the world to capture the challenges of the practice of medicine using video game mechanics. So we have over 750,000 medical professionals that are playing our games, earning continuing medical education credit while they learn about a whole range of procedures, as well as clinical challenges like diagnosis and treatment.
Amazing, and I'm really loving your background, Sam.
Well, we make video games, we have a lot of fun.
It seems it. Thank you. And can we also hear from Priszcilla as well?
Hello, everyone. I'm also very excited to be here today with you. My background is in organizational and educational psychology, and I researched it about 7 or 8 years prior to being the CEO and founder of Be-novative. how to really enhance creative problem-solving skills, both for individuals and for large groups. And when we found that there is actually something very common in how we apply collective intelligence, complex problem solving, design thinking, and agile techniques in large groups, both in a remote and also in-person setting. We digitalized it in a tool that it's called Be-novative, and I'm really proud of our amazing Fortune 500 clients across the globe using Be-novative with tremendous business success, but also for product development and also for how to upskill their employees for the future of work.
Interesting. I look forward to finding out more about that in today's session. Thank you all for those introductions. Before we get stuck in, it would really be good to highlight to the audience that both the chat and the Q&A function should be working. So please feel free to post any questions you have during the session. So I think we can all agree that this is one of the most pivotal times in modern history for shifts in how we work and learn around the globe. New technologies, socioeconomic developments, shifting expectations of workers, and disruptive events like COVID are placing the world of work in a constant state of flux. Without the right skills, workers will find it more and more difficult to find the work they need to earn a living. Even before COVID, business leaders were concerned about developing the talent needed for the modern world. And as we begin to recover from the pandemic, many businesses will lack the relevant skills they need. So this session is really to sort of bring to life the importance of new skills training for a more sustainable future of work. So I guess as we think about new skills training for work, it would be really great to hear more about how you are helping people to rapidly learn the skills they need so they can earn in the new world of work. And in particular, it would be helpful to understand which populations you target with your program and why, as well as how you're helping those people to learn rapidly, including what metrics you use as well. So Sebastian, maybe we can sort of come to you first with that question, and then we can hear from everybody else.
Sure. So, well, at Coding Dojo, we really believe in a way that anybody, I mean, what we do is short and intense programs that transform students from all backgrounds from 0 to 100, say. So in a matter of weeks, let's say 16 weeks, 20 weeks, they can learn something that they could usually learn in years, right? So that's a huge shift in a paradigm shift in a way. And what we do is that we focus a lot in practical learning. I mean, we have theory, but we think that we focus really almost like 80 or 90% in practical learning. From day one, students are doing exercises, real exercises, and those exercises increase in difficulty during their experience, right? And that makes them really learn what they need to learn from day one of work, basically. So also our programs do that. We reverse engineer. We do reverse engineering, and we start by seeing what the market needs, what companies need, and then we go back and create curriculum for that, right? So and regarding, you know, what's the in what public we focus. We focus on people that are living, you know, that are unemployed or that are looking to do a career change, and we work with them in that transition so they can be successful in getting a job or increase their salary or whatever they are looking for. But having said that, we are totally open to all kind of profiles. What we mainly do is we try to identify people that can commit they can put the hours, the effort, and the time to be successful in a program like this. In that way, we center our education in the student. We think that the student is the center of the education, and we give them all the support during the process, but they are the center of their own education. Yeah, so
great, interesting. And I guess with the programs that you run, how can you be sure that they are successful and that the people participating in those programs are actually learning new skills rapidly?
right. So we do have several metrics that we measure during the program. We have metrics related to drops. How many students drop the program? How many deferrals do we have? But the most important metrics are the outcomes, right? So we measure how many students get, first of all, how many students graduate the program, our programs, and then how many students get jobs after 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months after graduation. And happily, we have very good metrics. More than 90% of our students get jobs after 3 to 6 months after graduation. So that's our main metric, basically.
Great. And I feel as though when it comes to training and skills training in particular, often it can be quite difficult to actually measure success. So I'd be really interested to hear from some of our other speakers on sort of what metrics you use and whether it differs from anything Sebastian said.
I can build on Sebastian. Even though we are what we call in Brazil a regulated university, meaning we're regulated by the Ministry of Education and we issue a diploma at the end, we learned a lot from all the experiences that what we call here in Brazil free courses, meaning that they don't issue a diploma at the end, have to teach us. So the first question, the first academic challenge that we pose ourselves is, why do we need to have courses within our programs? Can we do something that doesn't have any courses, that only has projects? And that's how we started. So basically our student goes through a journey of 16 projects through the 4-year bachelor program. And these projects are driven from market needs. So we reach out to market players. It could be an NGO, a big company, a startup, and say, I'm sure you have a backlog of tech projects that you don't have the people to actually make it happen. Do you want to bring that on and get our students to develop a prototype in 10 weeks? And the market has been really receptive. So then students go out through this 10-week journey and they have 1/3 of the time is self-study. We need to teach tech students to learn by themselves. 1/3 of the time is project development, and another 1/3 of the time is actually classes where they learn from professors and executives and professionals. So basically, when we think about the population we're trying to reach, we're definitely in the skilling area. We're not reskilling or upskilling. We're looking at high school students who love technology, but understand that technology is no longer something that supports the businesses, supports the organizations. Technology is more and more becoming the core of organizations. So in order to be successful, they need to not only learn how to code, but also business competencies and how to, having the behavior to lead initiatives. So this is our population. When I say that we already being successful, is that the way we're building our university is different, because we're not sitting a bunch of academics in a room and saying, okay, so what do we want to teach? We are piloting, right? We're running different pilots with real students, with real projects, and learning very humbly everything that goes wrong and learning from our experience. So we haven't even launched it, and we already have 100 students that graduated in our boot camps that we're running to pilot our program. And out of those students, we had amazing numbers. So we had 91.3 NPS, 97% attendance, and 100% employability, meaning that after 10 weeks, they get either a job or a much better job than they had before the boot camps. So we're excited that, and I build on what Sebastian said, because when you attach the learning outcome to something they can use and apply in the short term, that makes a complete difference in student engagement, right? It's not something that I need to learn because one day I'll need it. It's something that I need to learn for today, for tomorrow, for this week. And that's the beauty of being project-based.
Fantastic. And I feel that it's very refreshing to sort of hear from you all that you have kind of new approaches for tackling skills training, because when people usually have the skills discussion, one of the key points that comes up is that the traditional education system is just not innovating quickly enough to keep pace with what is actually needed in the world of work. So it's really refreshing to hear that you are using new approaches. So I guess we've heard from Sebastian that he's tackling this from the sort of career transitioning, people who are transitioning careers perspective. And then Maira, you're looking at more sort of the youth. Is there anybody else that we have here today as a speaker who is targeting perhaps a different population?
We are also targeting, besides university students and people who are looking to change their careers, those mid-level or even high-level managers who are working at pretty established companies, like even large enterprises, and would like to not just keep up with the rapid changes of the world, but would like to drive it and actually shape the future that everyone wants to be part of. So Be-novative is a platform that is based on design thinking principles to help people to solve complex problems together in a way that everyone feels involved and everyone feels that the outcome builds on their diverse perspectives. So it needs to be really democratic, inclusive, and empowering. So basically for these reasons, we also measure a lot of things, but two metrics stand out: the participation and the activity rate. And for our participants, whoever is invited and logs on to the platform to join a creative problem-solving session or challenge shares per person at least 4 different contributions or ideas that could tackle the problem. But what we also measure is how many of the participants end with an outcome that they are proud of. So either a solution that they get passionate enough to start a business or start a new project, or post out on a social media that they have driven business results, new revenues, saved costs, or increased customer satisfaction rates, increased employee satisfaction rates. And these numbers we feel that contribute most to upskilling people, to get to know themselves, to get to know what are their real superpowers, and to help them to find out those types of new projects that they uncovered, they can lead, and that creates positive impact.
Amazing. I really like the metric that you use of sort of measuring an outcome that they're proud of. I think that's quite unique. And I think there are a lot of really great ideas in there on metrics that people can use if they are setting up skills programs. And I guess going back to that point around sort of which population you're targeting, it was interesting to hear that you're targeting sort of people in the sort of mid-career and management levels as well. And there was actually a report that was released in April by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development around skills strategies. And one of the things they mentioned in that report was that you can target different stages of the learning journey. You know, you have people in school, people perhaps in university, early career, mid-career, people who are returning to work, parents, and many other different populations as well. So I'll pop that link in the chat just in case that's useful for anyone. But I guess moving on then to another question, and this kind of goes back to something that Maira mentioned earlier about the fact that, Maira, you said you were really keen to make sure that people who were taking part in your programs could self-study and could study themselves. And I thought that was quite interesting because a question that comes up a lot in discussions around skills is, whose responsibility is it to upskill the global workforce? Is it the responsibility of companies, or is it responsibility of the individual themselves? So it would be useful to hear your perspective on that, and then also hear from some of our other speakers as well.
Well, I think we're fighting, it's like, I'm going to make a parallel here. It's like fighting an alien force. You know, this big alien ship came to Earth and we have this huge problem that we all need to tackle, right? So I think that's everybody's jobs in all different levels. So I was having a discussion the other day with one of the groups that I mentor in our programs. And these are young kids, right? And they needed to decide on something they wanted to work in Brazil. I'm sure everywhere, but in Brazil, fake news is a big deal. Right? And the people that most send out fake news are older population. They're alone at home. They're restricted by COVID. So what do they do all day? They're on WhatsApp, on their groups, you know, just spreading out fake news. So we're discussing whose job it is to teach, you know, the older population how to deal with technology, because that's reskilling too, right? How to use technology. Well, so we created this little program called Adopt Your Grandparent and teach them how to use technology appropriately. So it's an anecdote, but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, I think it's everybody's jobs. And I don't think we need to be competing, because everybody, companies, universities, programs, and open schools like we have here. I mean, I think it's, in my opinion, it's everybody's jobs.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you have any other perspectives on that?
Yeah, just to complement, I would say the programs that we have seen that have been the most successful in terms of projects, like big projects, are the ones that different entities, you know, in society collaborate. So basically, one that's called Chicago Codes in Chicago that we participated. One right now in Chile that is called Digital Talent, one in Costa Rica, etc. In all those programs, we see that the government is participating with giving funding, for instance, or doing research in terms of the needs of the local city. And then there's companies also giving their input in terms of what is required in that market. What jobs do they need, basically, and also allowing students that graduate to join their companies as junior developers, for instance, or trainees, you know. And there's also educators that are, you know, facilitating everything, and students that are also giving their input into and giving feedback on the programs, you know. So everybody is collaborating in different ways to do a good program.
Great. So Sam, you spoke earlier about the fact that you use gamification to upskill people in the medical field. It'd be great to hear your thoughts on how technology can be used to upskill people in the new world of work, just sort of more generally.
Oh man, so there are obviously an infinite number of ways that technology can be used to do that. I think maybe one example that sort of fits with the theme of some topics that a few folks have brought up already. So one was the topic of democratization. And I think whether you consider it an obligation or an opportunity to democratize access to training, this is one area where technology can provide great benefit. So the example, I mean, my examples are all going to be for medical training and healthcare and video games. But in the case of, you know, like what we do at Level X, for example, is we're using video game technology to democratize access to continuing medical training. So, you know, if you think about, I can go to Best Buy and for $50, I can buy a video game with, you know, a dozen soldiers on screen at once. And, you know, I can zoom into the eye of one of the characters, and this is the level of detail that we can achieve using video game technology. Contrast this, right, to like the cutting edge of medical training, where $140,000 or $250,000 simulator looks like it fell out of a gumball machine. But the bigger issue with training, right, with this kind of high-end medical training, aside from the fact that it, you know, looks like the veins were scribbled on in crayon by my 4-year-old, is that it's completely inaccessible to the vast majority of medical professionals, and that isn't just doctors, it's also nurses and EMTs and everything else, you know, where this technology is locked up in simulation centers. So that example that I just showed you of the eye surgery simulator, right, that costs 250 grand, it's locked up in the closest one we have in the best one we have in the Chicago area is locked up in an $80 million sim center 3 hours outside the city. That's inaccessible to 90% of practicing medical professionals who aren't at an academic institution. This is a model we're very familiar with in the video game business because we abandoned it 30 years ago, right? Nobody goes to the arcade anymore to play games. Everyone uses the device in their pocket. And so so using technology, we can basically, you know, disseminate training in a wide range of modalities to everybody worldwide. And we can update it, right? So as guidelines change, as best practices change, right? You don't need to go back to an institution or a simulation center or a college to retrain. You can update somebody's app on their phone and then they can retrain independently.
Very interesting. And again, really enjoyed the demonstrations there as well, because it really brought it to life. I guess moving to you, Marcello, you mentioned that the work you do is sort of centered around youth. How have you been able to implement technology into the programs that you run?
Yeah, maybe I can give you a different perspective since the populations we work with are quite different. So Recoded has been working in conflict-affected countries for about 5 years now. And we face some challenges that may be unfamiliar to most people because of the political climate in the Middle East and conflict in countries like Iraq and Yemen. But I think the most important thing when we think about the training that we do is not about us, honestly, Monique, is, you know, we give them an opportunity to access some, you know, the education that they might not get from universities and open up those doors to the tech sector. But the amount of talent that you have in a region like the Middle East, where you have the largest population of people under the age of 24 and also one of the highest unemployment rates, but the amount of talent and the hunger for participating in the technology sector is immense. But you're also dealing in some countries are a little bit more developed than the others, but, you know, in a country like Iraq, where we have been working on for several years, you have years and years and years of conflict and political crisis and economic crisis. And obviously, when you think about a technology ecosystem, it was not in place 5-10 years ago. But there is a nascent ecosystem that is now taking form, taking shape. And that's where I think we can do the work that matters, because what we have been doing, and I'll get to your question about technology, is harnessing that talent and giving them the ability to become independent learners. We wouldn't be doing a great job, or anyone who is doing work in the region, by just creating, you know, reinforcing that cycle of dependency that we know well, you know, in looking at the students that go through our programs as beneficiaries. They're not benefiting from anything. They're just getting access to an opportunity that they might not have been able to get because they've been displaced, or because education has been disrupted, or because they don't have access because of their ethnicity. But what we do is give them that opportunity. And when it comes to technology and the equity in the education, and this is not only for Recoded or for everyone working in the region right now, we take about 20 to 25 people in our cohorts, and it's a 5-month-long program, and we do 10 to 12 boot camps across the region. What if I do 150, 200 per cohort? Then it begs the question of, you know, access to technology and how we use this, because with 20 or 25, those who do not have access to, you know, bandwidth and connectivity and hardware, we're able to provide it. We give them credit so they can have access to reliable internet. We give them hardware so they can, you know, complete the course. But if you do that at scale, it becomes more complicated. And this is a mission that is even, you know, not within our grasp, giving them access to that. we have been able to support a small number of people, but then the next step for us is now, how do we do that at scale, and who else can participate in helping us increase the access to technology that will be very critical. When I see Sam, with the games, it's like, this is fantastic. How can I take this kind of technology to other parts of the world? And this is something that we're thinking about now as we scale.
Very, very unique sort of perspective on this whole conversation, because yeah, the work you're doing is very sort of unique. And I guess one question that I would have for you then is, so do you feel that skills programs can be used to address inequality? I think I know the answer to that already, but it'd be interesting to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, 100%. And I said in the beginning that the work we do is about change and diversity in the workforce. And this is because we want, when you think about countries like Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, Turkey, they are at the margins of the digital revolution just because things are not getting there at the same pace that they're getting in the United States or Europe. So what we need to do is to make sure that that gap is not widening. And how do you do that if universities are not preparing students for the workforce of the future, is to try to do those programs that bring something new. And it's not only to give, vocational training that is just upskilling a little bit. You have to accelerate that process. And we try to do that with our coding boot camps, which is a model that has been, used in other parts of the world, and we have adapted that to the Middle East, but also the possibility of creating that, helping to create that nascent ecosystem. Because when you think about finding jobs remotely, which is something that is not easy for everyone, especially if you're training people at scale, you need to find the opportunities locally as well. And for us, a good comparison point is Iraq, a place that we have been working for the longest. And we've seen in the last 5 years how today you can see the number of tech startups growing. And when you were mentioning before how you measure impact, I think it's critical for anyone teaching technical skills or soft skills that you look at the long term, because in the short term you might see number of graduates and number of jobs that come out of your program, and that's amazing. But the growth over time is what makes a difference. For us, that growth over time is what makes the difference, because now you have graduates who are starting companies, hiring other people because they're starting companies, growing in the business where they found a job after completing the program with us, and getting master's degrees and keep going on with their educational growth. So that is for us critical, how you measure that journey over time.
Great. And I think it'd be useful to hear other people's perspective on that as well, on whether skills programs can be used to address inequality, and whether that's something that you're already working on. I think it was mentioned earlier, but please do feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, as you know, in Brazil, we live that problem very closely, the inequality problem. And even though we are funded by a bank, the largest private investment banking in Brazil, we have our first class will be made 65% of full scholarship students, right? Because we want to make sure that we attract the best talent in Brazil, regardless of their ability to pay for education. So, by only putting the word out there, we're already attracting, a different population, even though we're based in São Paulo, which is, the financial center of Brazil. And we can see at the end of the day is a matter of supply and demand, right? If there's lots of demand for talent and the supply is low, is where you can make the fast delta in people's lives, right? We have an example of a student that went through one of the boot camps with us. He was making 400 reais, which is, I don't know, $80 probably, working for a state-owned company in his state. And the pandemic helped in that sense, because he went through the boot camp, learned how to code, and then he got a job in a startup making 5 times more, right? So I'm sure Sebastian and Marcello have lots of examples like that as we're starting up. But I think that what we need to keep in mind is that because of the lack of supply of talent in technology. That's the main driver and the main reason why a little bit of training can make a big difference in terms of they getting that push start in their career and then building from that. We cannot lose sight, however, in order to happen what Marcello was mentioning, which is basically they continue growing their career, not only getting that first job. We need to make sure that we follow up on these students, regardless of their age, and making sure they get continuous training, right? Otherwise, they're going to take the first step, but not necessarily keep growing. So we pose our community as not alumni. We don't have that term. We don't use that term. There's no such thing as an alumni. What we have is a continuous community of people that can come back as professors, that can be mentors, they can invest in student startups and so on. And that's a hard decision to make, but technology can help in terms of keeping track and in contact with all those people. So that's my 2 cents of contribution here.
That's great. And I really like that concept of not labeling it as alumni, because it really sort of embraces the whole sort of concept of lifelong learning and being able to, you know, constantly revisit and learn all throughout your career. So that's really, really fantastic. I guess following on from that point around sort of diversity and inclusion, something that's sort of really well known in the UK is that when it comes to the conversation around D&I, what you usually find is that companies are quite good at getting people through the door and getting that D&I maybe at the more lower levels. But when it comes to progression through the company and reaching the more senior levels, it really starts to become really difficult. So I guess that's kind of leading on from what the two of you were saying. Does anyone have any other thoughts on sort of what can be done to address that, or how skills programs can be designed in order to sort of help with that?
Yes.
I would say mentor. You go on. Continue that.
Thank you, Sebastian. Actually, I wanted to add that a different perspective is what if we get the chance or give the chance for the participants to contribute, but throughout the program, they feel they have different, let's say, opportunities or chances to succeed. And for that, a best practice that we use is a so-called semi-anonymous way of participating in the program, which means that until the point that they feel they got a good evaluation that they are okay with, they don't need to uncover their identity, which means that basically at the time when either the community, the mentors or the experts are giving feedback and evaluating contributions, answers, solutions to challenges, they don't know if it was coming from a trainee, if it was coming from a person with a certain background or interests, or from the senior leadership. It only reveals at the time when everyone feels like, okay, this is my solution and I'm really proud of that one. So this way we found that it's another element of gamification, kind of, because everyone learns through participating in solving challenges. And they can do it as many times as they wish if they get the chance to participate, because there is no risk. So the worst thing that can happen is that they have a learning experience. They get to know that not because of their personality, but because of their contribution, they got certain feedback. They learn from it and maybe try different next time. And whenever they feel like, okay, I achieved something, I got a really good feedback for my contribution or solution, they uncover their identity and they can take it from there.
That's a really useful way to sort of implement feedback. And as you said, in an anonymized way, so that it can really help with diversity and inclusion. And I guess following on from that point, it's kind of important to note that when we talk about skills, we aren't only referring to technical skills. we're also referring to soft skills as well, which has already been sort of touched on in this session. And it'd be great to dig a bit deeper into that and sort of find out more about how you are facilitating soft skills training into your programs and what techniques you're using. So that's a really great example of sort of how feedback is facilitated. But is there anything else that you've implemented, such as mentoring or coaching or anything like that?
Well, we do have some things in the program. I mean, adding up on what was already mentioned, we push a lot in students to be, first of all, self-sufficient. We say we're creating self-sufficient developers. Why is that? Because we think that more than, learning a specific language and going to the market with that, you need to be, as you were mentioning, and everyone here, you need to learn all your life, basically. You need to be a long-term learner. And in that, you need to have that mindset. You need to have the basic skills to continue learning whatever you want in the future. And that's what we wanted to create, in a way. And in parallel to that, of course, we push into collaboration. More than competition in our bootcamps, is much more into collaboration. Let's say, if you are, and humility as well. So you need to be humble enough that if you are you are number one in your class, be humble enough to collaborate with the rest, to give help to the rest, and in that you will also be learning, right? I mean, the best way to retain concepts in your mind is to teach, and also if you are sometimes a little bit behind, also you need to be humble enough to ask for help, right? To be self-sufficient to ask for help. So we, in that way, we create also a community where students teach each other, and later on, when they graduate, we also create that community where we have mentors that help others to join eventually their companies. Also, they come back to our camp to code in Dojo to teach as TAs or even as instructors. So it's a big community of collaboration.
Great, and then yeah, that's quite interesting. The fact that some people come back as TAs, there's a real sort of full cycle happening there. Any other perspectives on that around sort of soft skills and how that's facilitated?
So we assess soft skills in our admissions process, right? So every individual needs to bring on a project and they work in a group, and we observe that and we give students feedback on what they did well. And in my opinion, there's science to do this, because people tend to think, oh, that's soft skills, they're just gonna learn as they go. It's not like that, right? So you need to make sure, if you want to do soft skill, you need to make it right. So what I mean is defining specific competencies, behavioral competencies that you want to develop, what kind of behaviors are attached to those. Make sure you measure, throughout the learning journey. And one other thing, I think that at the end, soft skills training is much more about training professors, training them to act like coaches and mentors, than making sure you have the best communication teacher, because that's not something you can get inspired by that, but you're going to learn by doing that. So making sure you create experiential opportunities for students to train and develop their skills, but also making sure that whoever is tutoring or teaching them is ready to give them feedback in a very direct and constructive way, and measured through time. That's how we do it. But the hardest part is not to design the program, it's not to define the competencies, is making sure that professors are able to seize the teaching opportunities in order to make sure students can reflect and then learn on the soft skills. So that's where we dedicate most of our time, is much more on the professors and our faculty than on the students themselves, right? Making sure we can seize those opportunities.
That's great that specific attention is put towards soft skills, because you're absolutely right. Too often than not, people do kind of push soft skills to the side and think that it's just kind of naturally acquired, when in actual fact, you have to be quite intentional about it. So I guess bearing in mind time, it would be really great if we could sort of hear from everybody that we have here today on sort of what's one major insight you've gained about how people rapidly learn new skills. So it'd be great if we could start with Marcello on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's pretty simple. You need to empower youth, and you need to give them the ownership over their learning journey. And there is so much research that is interesting about how people learn, how the brain learns. And if we just stop and listen to a lot of you saying how project-based learning and those kinds of techniques have helped students to learn the skills that they need. So just give that sort of ownership to the youth, and they will be able to learn those skills with the support of your organization. So for us, that is front and center to the work we do.
Great. And Sam, it'd be great to hear from you as well.
Well, in the video games industry, we often affect training and learning at the, I'll say is at the neurochemical level. So video game designers over the last 3 decades have, really distilled a recipe for driving learning and behavior change that we've, practiced at scale among 1 billion players, right? We know how to hit the perfect balance between reward and frustration, challenge and skill, to literally like maximize dopamine release in the brain at the right frequencies to maximize engagement and learning. Example, I assume most of you have played Angry Birds. Yes, you can. Okay. So if you think back, like, have you ever wondered why Angry Birds is so addictive? If you think back to the first time you played, it's actually evolutionary, right? You open up the game, you see a tower of pigs, you see a bird, you pull it back, you fire at the tower of pigs, and you miss. And the pigs laugh at you, and you get frustrated. And that frustration builds as you try a second and third time, right? Pull the bird back, get a little bit closer, keep firing, and you get closer and closer, but you keep missing until eventually on the third try, right, you pull the bird back, you fire, and it's glorious. There's explosions and animations and pigs flying everywhere, and the music changes. All of this is deliberately designed to trigger a dopamine release in your brain, which literally reinforces the neural pathways you used on the last fire. This is how 2 hours later, you're firing that bird between 2 narrow obstacles at 50 yards. So this is a mechanic. We didn't invent this in the games industry. This is how the mammalian neuron has learned for tens of millions of years, right? This is how our ancestors learned how to throw a spear. And so what we're doing is just, what are the key insights? Like, we're finding these nuggets of understanding how the human brain has evolved at the neurochemical level, taking advantage of that to drive learning, not just, how to fire an Angry Bird, but how to develop a much wider and more applicable range of skills.
Fantastic. And Sebastian, it would be great to hear from you next.
Yeah, I would say, motivation, and as Marcello was saying, also, ownership and motivation. Sometimes our programs, are super intense and difficult. I mean, learning programming, coding, things like Python or others are not, it's not magic, right? It requires time and effort. And we give them all support to our students that they could have, but they need to be in the center of learning. And I think that being, kind of in a mission to get something, seeing like the end of the light at the end of the tunnel when they are fully learning and in coding and all that, but seeing the goal, seeing that they can achieve something, and in that mission mentality of getting to the end and overcoming obstacles and everything. And I think that is crucial in increasing motivation and the success of a program.
Great, and we've got 1 minute left, but very keen to hear from Priszcilla and Maira. So if you could summarize in 30 seconds, that'd be great. Priszcilla, let's go to you next.
From my side, it's on the mentorship and coaching that we found that this is key for all project-based learning, upskilling, soft skills, because we need to let go of the leader who knows everything and need to welcome a new type of leader who is more like a coach or facilitator of an organization, who help the collaborators grow. And if it's not a one-time event that your contribution is evaluated, but somebody like a mentor constantly helps you to give feedback and gives you the opportunity to improve, then it's perfect.
I totally agree with Priszcilla and everything that was said. I just want to add that adults learn when what they are learning is useful. So I think usefulness, to make sure that whatever you learn has a purpose in the short term, not only someday. I think that has made a difference, because when there's the feeling of belonging in what I learn, I'm going to use soon, the commitment to learning improves in our experience. So that's what I would add.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to all our speakers. It's been a very, very insightful session. And thank you to everyone who attended as well. I hope you found that useful. I've seen some really great feedback in the chat already. So thanks everyone, and enjoy the rest of the day.